let's talk about some controllers. So I did put out a video with some tips on multiplayer in general, and I'd like to do a series, but obviously I need to get some views to keep that going. But and my other video was on locking and unlocking, and I think it's incredibly important for good gameplay. So if you want to learn a little bit more about that, check that one out. But so controllers here, I had been playing originally with just the standard PS5 controller. I actually started, I've never had any kind of back pedals, but I watched some of the other videos of some of the really good players like Jeenine or Chasethebro or whoever it may be, and I'm like, how are they doing these things? How are they swapping items like that? I can't, my fingers can't do that. I feel like I have to get a pro controller to be better at this game. Most important thing I would say is being able to turn your camera while running. And it's such an underlooked thing, but I was like, how can you do that if R is what, the right stick is what turns your camera, but then you're holding your thumb on circle? How are these players doing that? I was like, they must have a back paddle. Well, I guess some of them don't, and maybe they play claw grip completely. One of the things I wanted to find most was how are these players holding their controller to do this? And Jeenine finally put out a video on what he does, and he basically said he uses claw grip the majority of the time, and I had never tried that. I ended up trying to learn it during Elden Ring. I started out on Dark Souls 3, maybe a couple years, I don't know how far it was after it came out. I just played the campaign, and then I started doing some PvP, and then I got really into it, ended up playing all the Souls games eventually. But I didn't get into PvP until I went back to Dark Souls 3 later on. I never used a claw grip. I just basically held the controller like most other people do, I think. And then, like I said, when Jeenine came out with that video, I was like, well, maybe I want to learn how to item swap, and I guess I need to learn claw grip to learn how to item swap. So I just started testing that out, and it took me maybe a day or two to get used to it, but it really isn't that hard. Really all you do is on your left hand, or whatever hand you're wanting to claw with, that is, you kind of turn your wrist to where your hand is facing more towards the sky as opposed to sideways when you want to put your finger on the D-pad or on the triangle, square, circle, X buttons. You would turn you don't want to do it with your finger kind of hooked in this weird way. You want to turn your wrist so you're not bending your wrist or anything in a weird way. You just turn your wrist up. So when I'm playing, I'm holding the controller fairly normally, and actually I was one of the people that only used my index finger for the back triggers, R1, R2, L1, L2. But I ended up switching that to where I use at least on my left hand, I'll use my middle finger for the L2 button. And so that really helped improve my gameplay. And what I do is I'll hold the controller kind of in the standard format, index on L1, middle finger on L2, the majority of the time I'm playing, and only if I'm going in for an item swap do I turn my wrist over into the claw position. And then for my right hand, I did not, I didn't want to play claw really on that hand, because I feel like I have a better hold on the controller with one hand always in a good, a normal holding position. So I don't like to claw both hands. So I never really practiced clawing with the right hand as much. What I ended up doing was I had my standard PS5 controller, and I just bought some, I don't know, they were like 10 or 20 bucks maybe off Amazon, some back paddles, and I installed those with some of the small screws and tools, and it actually worked for a while, and still works. I will say, like, the back paddles I got, they weren't expensive ones, so I feel like they were a little bit delayed from what a normal button would press. Like, you know, maybe a frame or two. I don't actually know how much time a frame is, but like, if I was to hit circle to dodge and then a back paddle to dodge, the back paddle wouldn't start the dodge motion until just a little bit after I pressed it. And what I'd end up doing was I put the right bumper trigger, whatever you want to call it, that I added on, I made that my circle button, so it mirrors circle. So I just use that to dodge and to run a lot of the times, and it helps you be able to turn your camera. And so if you don't have that, or if you don't want to do that, what I would recommend is switching your dodge button to something like an L1 or an L2 or an R1 or an R2, so that you can use dodge and run at the same time where you can turn your camera. So that's one way to get around the problem. But I tell you what, I love having back paddles on, just because it makes everything so much easier. And I had made the left back paddle down originally so that you can switch your items with it, but when I started playing with my index finger and middle finger on our L1 and L2, I ended up really just almost not using that left back bumper button that I had added on. So I don't really even use that anymore since I started playing with claw and playing the other way like I'd mentioned. But yeah, overall, I would say one of the most important things for Elden Ring PvP, and just PvE in general, any of it, is being able to turn the camera while you're running or dodging. So make sure you figure out a way that you can do that, if it's adding back paddles, getting a pro controller, or switching your dodge button to something that allows that. And then after that, you know, I would say figuring out how to item swap is what's going to take your game to the next level. Obviously dodge timing and not panic rolling is one of the first things too, but once you're an invader and you've kind of learned most of these things, to not panic roll and to lock and unlock, then figuring out how to item swap is going to be next. You know, I'm not great at it. I'm not a Jeenine, I'm not a Chasethebro or Stolovsky, but I can do it here and there, and I'll pull it out every now and then, and it's really good for mixing up attacks, because the players will get used to what you were using on your weapon set, and then you pull out a different weapon and mainly use the Ash of War. Obviously, if you're like trying to finish somebody off, you may want to switch to a rapier or something like that, or if someone's just running away, you want to switch to something that can roll catch better. Something like a greatsword is just so bad at roll catching. If someone's running away, that it's almost impossible to actually hit them. But if you pull out a long halberd, spear, rapier, great thrusting sword, you know, whatever it is, that's always good. So yeah, being able to item swap is crucial. I don't item swap my talismans as much as, you know, I could, I guess. That just gets a little tedious to me. I'm not, you know, I could do it, I wouldn't be particularly fast at it yet. I haven't even organized my talismans in a way that's, you know, most efficient to swap. I don't swap my armor either much, unless I'm just heavy rolling. But, you know, learning that stuff, definitely important. But yeah, so controller wise, I had added those back paddles. Now I actually just got that new DualSense Edge, and I'm liking it so far. It's very comfortable. It's got the two different kinds of back paddles you can add. One of them's like your standard bumper, one of them's more of a, it's not going to get in the way. I actually only have the right one on right now, and I think that's working out really well for me. But yeah, I think in terms of elevating your gameplay, these are things you got to start thinking about if you like this game, and it's good in any other game too. Once I had learned how to use the claw grip, and you know, for my left hand mainly, and use the D-pad with my index finger instead of my thumb, It actually helped out in the new God of War game because you end up switching weapons a lot in that, and I was able to switch weapons with, I think you used left or right or something, I can't remember, or down maybe, or all three. And so you can switch weapons and use the I can't remember what it's called in God of War, but basically the Ash of War that was in God of War. For each weapon you had a light one, the rune attacks or whatever they're called. You had a light one and a heavy one, so you could basically just quickly switch using the claw grip while you're also moving, and it made things much better when I actually was playing God of War. So it's going to come in handy in other games. I'm not really a shooter enjoyer. I don't play many shooters, but I'm sure it would be helpful in Call of Duty or something of that nature. Just learn how to play with claw, and you start getting faster at things and more nimble, and that's going to give you an advantage over everybody else. I mean, once you get to a certain place in multiplayer, and I'm not necessarily at the peak, but I'm pretty good. You know, I can fight most players pretty well in this game, at least, and you know, I think I stand a chance against everybody. If people, I think there's a couple things in the game that heavily put things in your advantage. Like, to me, Bloodhound Step and Quick Step are just way over-tuned right now and need a big nerf, both of them. You can say Bloodhound Step is nerfed, and maybe it's not the things themselves that need the nerf, but it's the recovery time after an attack in which you can use them. So I mean, you almost can't get hit. Like, if you're using a Ultra Greatsword and Quick Step, it's almost impossible to hit you because you're gonna poise, break, trade with any, and hyper armor trade with anything when you do Quick Step, R1 Quick Step. And like, so you basically almost can't get punished, and you're gonna win the trade with hyper armor and stun, most likely more than the other player. And that's obviously Great Spears. Dual Great Spears are the worst because you can Quick Step, L1 Quick Step, and almost impossible to punish, impossible to see, and you just, I mean, it's just stupid right now. So again, dual Great Spears are the most overpowered thing in this game, and having Quick Step or Bloodhound Step on those just makes it even worse. So those, I think, all of those things need to be adjusted when the next patch or DLC comes out, hopefully. But anyways, make sure you're playing with, figuring out how to play best for your style. If you're looking to improve, if you're pretty good at multiplayer but you're like, hey, I'm missing some things, figure out how to grip the controller better. You know, the claw style is what most of the top guys use, I think. That's what makes them good. I'm not as good as them, but you know, I've gotten a lot better by switching to that, being able to item swap, being able to run and turn the camera. These are things that you got to learn the more you play this game. And it's good in PvE too. It's not just PvP that this comes in handy. Well, those are some tips for now. I'd love to hear what you guys would like to hear me talk about, learn more about, see videos of. If anyone's actually watching this, if anyone made it to the end, who knows. But yeah, leave a comment, let me know some tips that you may want to see, let me know some footage you may want to see, and if you're enjoying this content, check out some other videos. Hopefully you can like and subscribe, and keep coming back for some more. Adios, folks.
Are you charging it for that?